I had a manager ask me where I saw myself in 10 years, and I said, getting my MBA. And his exact response was, well, that's fucking stupid. And I still went and worked at this company. So many red flags that I have ignored. Hopefully other people will learn from my mistakes. There's a reason why this podcast exists. Welcome back to part 2 of our deep dive into interviews. In this episode, we're talking about what it's like on the other side of the table and the red flags you need to keep an eye out for. Let's get into it. Moving on. The next section that I want to talk about around interviews is the boss's POV, which is really to give you a sense of how a manager feels about giving interviews, because it's really easy to get caught up in how you feel about the interview. But guess what? Bosses typically hate them too. I would say, now I can't speak for all managers. I know some people really love this stuff, I guess. Me personally, I hate interviewing. Hate it. The concept of interviewing to me is ridiculous. I have 30 minutes, maybe an hour, to deduce in full if somebody can successfully accomplish a job. Now, when I was interviewing, typically it was for technical roles, which made it even harder because finding test tasks and developing all of these things to like psychologically and technically test somebody was an absolute headache. But I've had so many interviews that I typically within the first 5 minutes know if I want to keep talking to this person. It's usually very fast. And so that's why it's like having that tell me about yourself question golden and ready to rock and roll at all given times is so critical. Because I mean, I can think of multiple interviews where I just stopped it. I was like, let's say it was a 30-minute interview. I'm 15 minutes in. The entire thing is just Q&A. Like, okay, can you tell me about a time you did this? They answer my question, they shut up. Can you tell me a time you did this? They answer my question, they shut up. We're done with all of my questions in 15 minutes, and the interview was for 30 minutes. I can promise you're not getting the job. It just doesn't work, right? Like, I don't want to work with somebody that is so, blatant. Yes, it doesn't necessarily, mean that you couldn't do the job. But once again, if getting hired isn't about your ability to do the job. Getting hired is about your ability to do the job for your manager. And you have to appease your manager, right? And bottom line is be memorable. Some people would tell me about their aspirations in interviews. Like I remember I met somebody at an event and they told me they wanted to start a business where they sponsored company retreats and they used the money to sponsor like students having similar events or something like that. That stuck with me. If I ever ran into that person again, I would be like, okay, I know who you are. But I've also had people who don't answer things. They answer very short. They're straight to the point. And although that's nice in the sense of, yes, you answered my question, it is not nice from the perspective of having a conversation with you is frickin' miserable and I want to get off this call just as much as you, right? So I have ended interviews early. I have, provided feedback to people. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some people will see. I mean, it depends on the type of job, right? And once again, this goes back to my point. It all depends on who your manager is, right? Some jobs and some managers, they want somebody who answers quick questions, who gets in and out, and who does the job. That might be more common, though, for somebody who's like a manual worker, right? Like somebody who does like hand work or construction or something like that. Obviously, like, I don't need to know a ton about your personality. I need to know that you're good with tools and that you're, up to date on safety protocols. But if I'm hiring for somebody who's going to help me build a new department, I want somebody that I can collaborate with. I want somebody that I can discuss ideas with. And if I don't have that, right, then I'm going to look for somebody else to work with. So I think that's the big thing with the boss POV. I've done tons of interviews. I still hate it. I'm better at it. I am definitely better at it, but I still hate it. I have certain questions. Every manager has certain questions that they love to ask because it's like their telltale sign. Ojijan, do you know what Ojijan was telling me he does? Ojijan is our grandfather, by the way. Ojijan means grandfather in Japanese, but okay, Ojijan was telling me that the way he would answer or the way that he would interview people was he would have them sharpen a pencil and he would watch how they sharpened a pencil. And if they couldn't even sharpen a pencil, then he knew they would be a horrible engineer for this nuclear power plant. And that's how he would eliminate them. Like he wouldn't even have a more conversation. He would just walk in the room, hand them a pencil, say sharpen it, right? So that's like a behavioral, that's like a stress test, right? It's like a it's an intense. Well, it's definitely because it's you. And that's a good thing. So that's exactly what you want to see in an interview. You want it to, because listen, the whole interview is telling this person, do I want to work with you, right? So if you're super short and you don't answer the questions or you don't have any conversation at all, it's a lot less fun, honestly. It's boring. Like they're like, "Oh God, I don't want to work with you," because imagine me having to sit behind the counter with you for 4 hours on Black Friday and I can't even hold a conversation with you. Exactly. They love to, exactly. You want, everyone likes to talk about themselves. You always want your interviewer to talk about themselves. There was like I don't even remember what it was. There's some stat that says like when you mention someone's partner's name or their own name or their child's name, like something lights up in their brain. So yeah, people love talking about themselves. They love sharing about themselves. If you're in an interview, and this gets us perfectly into our next topic, which is a mentality check. Because with so many of these aspects in business, we need to check our mentalities. The way we approach situations is going to drastically change how we come out of those situations, how we look at those situations, and ultimately, like, how it turns out for us, right? So, I want to do a mentality check for interviews because people have so many misconceptions of what an interview is and what it's supposed to be. So, number one misconception is people think that interviews are auditions. It's like they believe that it's a time to sell yourself and do a show and tell of your talent. Now, although it is true to some degree, and yes, you are doing a show and tell and you are doing these things, that is not what an interview is. And why is that wrong? Well, there's a couple things. One, this mentality is going to put the company's best interest in front of your own because you're not even factoring in your own best interest. You're so focused on selling yourself, you're not even letting them sell the company and the environment to you, right? The other problem with this is it assumes that a company's public perception, so this could be their websites, their social media, the job description that you're reading, is 100% accurate to the internal reality. What I mean by that is most of the time you read a job description, it is not 100% the job you will be doing. And it does depend on the type of company and it does depend on the type of position. But for example, I used to write job descriptions and then I would tell people, here's the deal. I am starting a new department. So it is very likely that you are going to get different tasks. You are going to get different roles. You are going to be asked to do new things as this department grows, right? Because I don't know everything I'm going to need 5 years from now. And if you stay working with me for 5 years, I'm very confident these things are going to change because the one thing that's constant is change. So that's really important. Another thing, just like an influencer posts the best of the best in their life, and maybe some of them post weird videos of them crying and other things like that, but for the most part, right, for the most part, they curate a very specific image, right? Like there's that Instagram called Influencers in the Wild, and you see these guys like not even standing by cars they own, but just standing by rental cars or cars that are in the street making videos to make them seem cooler, right? And they curate this very nice perception. Well, here's the thing. Companies do the same shit. Okay? All of these like best company to work for awards, I shouldn't say all of them, but a lot of them. Being the best company to work for is as easy as filling out an application and paying some money. Now, there are certain ones that are based on more merit and they interview employees more, but there are also a ton of companies that don't do that. And so it's really important because you cannot trust 100% of what a company says. And you're not going to post a picture of employees having mental breakdowns on your social media because nobody likes that. That's not cute. However, it is very, very likely that at some of these companies, there are people having mental breakdowns behind the scenes. And instead of posting those pictures, they post the very happy picture from the company picnic where everybody's drunk. And that's what you're going to see online. So, once again, why is it wrong? Because you can't factor in yourself with this mentality that you're auditioning. And it also, you cannot trust a company for everything that they put out there in the public to be right. So, what is the right mentality to have when interviewing? Well, an interview is like a first date. You would never go on a second date with someone if you were the only one to talk. Maybe different for you, little T. But for most people, right? If you're the only one talking in the conversation, it's a pretty bad first date. You don't learn anything about the other person. You don't know anything about them. And an interview is really a time where both parties are trying to understand each other. And so, as much as they want to understand if they want to work with you, you need to be trying to understand if you want to work with them. Right? Little T's different. Well, I mean, it's just, well, listen, here's the thing. Like, there are, I mean, I remember, right? Like, a company isn't, let's say you're going up for a role, like a C-level role, right? Like a CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, right? I remember this one client of mine that I used to have that told me they had turned over CMOs. They were on their seventh CMO in less than 3 years. Now, when you're interviewing for that job, that's not something they're going to tell you up front. Hey, 7 people have already failed at this. It is very unlikely that you work here for more than 4 months. No, companies do not show all their cards at once. Neither should you, right? You shouldn't go straight to the company and say, hey, I made this huge mistake a couple years ago and I cost the company so much frickin' money. No, you don't lead with that information. We don't want to tell the company that that happened. That's unnecessary fuel, right? So instead, what we do is right. We do not trauma dump on the first date. Exactly. Couldn't have put it better myself, little Tay. So, bottom line is, you can't trust a company knows what they're doing. You can't trust that they already have this all set. I think, especially when you're talking with a small or medium company, right? A lot of the times those team members have no idea what they're doing because they've never done it before. When I was building the department I built in my previous role, I had no idea what every step was new. Every step was like, I have not done this before. I shall do this now. Let's figure it out. And so when I was hiring people, I was very transparent about that. That might be like my I don't know, the pinch of the tism, the pinch of the ADHD, who knows. But like I was very honest in many ways, but most people are not. And a lot of the times, even if you have the best practices, you have all of these different components of it, it's still not going to be 100% foolproof, right? Whatever a company is doing, they might be following what they think is best, but it doesn't guarantee success 100% of the time. So, with this mentality check, remember, an interview is a first date. We do not trauma dump on a first date. And how can we take action against this? Well, there's a couple things. The first one is we research the company. Researching the company is going to give you a sense of their culture. It's going to give you a sense of what this public perception they've curated is, right? And imagine if they don't have a public perception curated, that also tells you a lot about the company, because it tells you that they're so small, they have yet to take the time to worry about developing this perfect public perception to attract talent, right? So everything has a meaning behind it. Another thing is researching the department and researching managers ahead of time. There's this beautiful tool called LinkedIn, also a double-edged sword. It can be great. It can be a little annoying, but at the end of the day, it can give you a sense of who else works at this company. You can look how long they've worked at the department. You can look up your manager, right? Like my boyfriend, when he was interviewing for this role, the first thing he's doing is like open your LinkedIn and look up this manager. Let me figure out, if there's any information that I can understand about this person before I go into the interview, let me know, because they have a gender neutral name. They don't have any of their experience online. Like, I don't know how long they've been at this company. Like, I have so many questions. Let me see if I can find them on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is your best friend. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Corporate stalking's big. Corporate stalking is like how you get into the game of sales, but like, yes, corporate stalking is good juice. We love corporate stalking. I pay extra to stalk corporately and have people not know that I'm stalking them. But that is for me to know and nobody else to know, right? And then the other thing is, as you gain experience, so as you work for even a small part-time job, even an internship, any of these things, you're going to start to identify deal breakers. Some of it might be, some people are really, really gung-ho on, I do not work weekends. I've known some people who are just like, I will not work weekends. I don't care what the job is. I won't do it. Once you've identified those deal breakers, it's important to work in questions that help you identify if they have their deal breakers, right? Or perhaps you do not like companies that require in office 24/7. Now, I personally think if you're just starting out in your career, you definitely want to be in office. But in any scenario, if in office isn't for you because you've determined and you've identified through experience and not hypotheticals, but by actually doing it, that you don't like it, then you need to ask those questions. What are the chances that this company returns to office in the future? Right? And then that way you can get a sense of like, okay, am I going to have this issue in the future? Are they going to fire me? Am I going to have to find a new job? Like, that's kind of a sense. Okay, next one. Misconception number 2. Most people think that getting a job comes down to being the best candidate for the job and your ability to do the job. And a vehicle is simply just an interview, an interview is simply just a vehicle for you to show your potential and manage and your manager that you're the most qualified person for the job. Right? Let me just say that all over again. Okay. Misconception number 2. Getting a job comes down to being the best candidate for the job and your ability to do the job. And an interview is simply just a vehicle for you to show this manager or this person that works on the other side that you can do said job. But this is super wrong. Why? Well, this mentality assumes that your manager will put the company's interests in front of their own. And to be very clear, you should never put a company's interest in front of your own. So, of course, your manager is not going to put what's best for the company in front of themselves, right? So, if they interview someone who sucks, but maybe they're brilliant, right? Maybe they're brilliant, but they really suck. Like, just getting through the 30-minute interview was painful. It was painful, right? They are not going to get hired. Because even though they can do the job, even though they're so smart, they're so brilliant, they have all of these great ideas, they are horrible to work with. And the last thing your manager wants to do is to create reasons why they're additionally hating going to work every day. So, how do we think about the right mentality here? Well, getting a job comes down to being the best candidate for the hiring manager, AKA your boss. So it's not about being just the best person, but it's about being the best person for them. And what are they interested in? And there's a couple things to consider, right? Like, if you are a super, super strong candidate, you might have a manager that doesn't select you simply because they're afraid you're going to take their job. Right? And they're afraid that they're going to have to compete with you. So they're like, I need someone who's not too senior, who's not too good at this job, because my company could replace me if I hire this person. And I have to protect myself, right? Like, maybe they have kids at home, maybe they have a family. They got to protect their own money before they can even think about giving you money. The other thing is, like, even if you have, let's say there's 5 candidates, and of these 5 candidates, 3 of them have the exact same technical background. Like, all 3 of them, they have the exact same skill set, they have the exact same experience, all of these things. The decision of who gets the job is simply going to come down to who the boss wants to work with most, who they like the most, and who they get along with the most, right? So the seasonal job you applied for, a lot of people probably applied for that. A lot of people probably interviewed for that job. But you and your boss hit it off instantly. You had great conversations, you got to chit chat, he got to talk about himself. And what happened? You ended up getting the job, right? Right. Let's not get technical there. Well, they even kept you after seasonal and now you're a part-time worker. So honestly, like, it worked out right. You made the right moves. You got along with the right people. And so anyways, how do we take action on this mentality check? Well, the first thing is research your manager ahead of time. Get to know anything you can about them. Where they went to school, do they have hobbies? Stalk them on Facebook, stalk them on LinkedIn. Obviously, this is a little creepy, but at the same time, if you find out on their LinkedIn that they really, really like sports, let's say they're a big Broncos fan, you can go into your interview and say, man, the Broncos have been crushing it. And I promise you, they're going to be like, "What? You like the Broncos? Let's talk about the Broncos. Let's get in on it. Let's talk for the next 3 hours." You know, one of the best signs in an interview is if your interview goes over. If you go over the amount of time you scheduled for your interview, that is a fantastic sign that you did wonderfully at the interview because your manager wasn't only willing to give you there's no what? Yeah. I mean in today in today's world, yeah. True, true. And some people like it, dependent on your professions, like certain professions don't use LinkedIn at all, right? And so, like, let's say you're a nurse and you're going into the nursing field. A lot of nurses don't use LinkedIn. They just don't. So you got to find new avenues to stalk, you know? And maybe their Facebooks are private, maybe. But But maybe you'll find like a pamphlet from back when they were in college and it'll say that they were a part of certain clubs and they did so. Who knows? You never know. So just do your research. And then the bottom line is try to have a conversation. Do not go in Q&A, answering questions, really cold cut, really efficient. It's lame. It's boring. You're not going to be remembered. Your interviewer is surely not going to want to continue the conversation. And remember, the goal is you want them to work for you. Okay, next piece. Red flags. This is the big section. This is a huge chunk, little T. So strap in because we've got all kinds of them. But I'm going to run through them rapid fire here. Okay, 1. They show up late without an apology or they reschedule multiple times. Why is this a red flag? Yes, companies get busy. Yes, people don't manage their time properly. Fires come up, whatever it is. But if you're getting rescheduled on multiple times or someone just isn't showing up or they show up 10, 15 minutes late to your interview, what they're communicating to you is that they don't respect your time. And if they're not respecting your time now, they surely will not respect your time later. If I would have known this at the beginning of my career, I probably wouldn't worked for the same people I worked for as much because they did a lot of this, all right? The next one, they seem disorganized or unprepared. Now this one, it's a soft red flag because realistically, some people are just very unorganized. I'm one of those people. I wasn't always the most organized. I was prepared. I'd always have some questions, right? But it depends on how bad it is. Of course, if they're a little unorganized, maybe they forgot they got the wrong resume or HR messed something up. That's not the end of the world. That's fine. But let's say somebody shows up, they know nothing about this situation, right? They're super unprepared. They flat out tell you even. Sometimes they'll do this. They'll say, I'm sorry, I'm not prepared for this. Let me find some questions. That is a massive red flag, right? It shows how chaotic the work environment is before you even get in there, right? So that level of disorganization is just going to give you a sense of, how much chaos is going on behind the scenes. The next one is they are vague about work expectations and responsibilities. Now, to be clear, some roles have more vague functions, right? Because let's say I need you to build a social media plan. Building a social media plan is a pretty vague ask. I'm not going to sit here and say I need 4 posts a month, 5 done this, 5 blah, 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 blah. Like, that's more detail than you're typically going to get. But something that would be really, really vague is like, I need you to grow socials. What does that mean? I don't know. They don't know. It's likely a trap. There is a reason why if a company cannot outline a job description enough, it means that you're likely never going to do enough to please them, right? Because how do I achieve grow socials in comparison to develop a social media plan? I can achieve developing a social media plan, but grow socials is so broad. You could easily, anytime I accomplish something, you would say, no, you didn't do it right. Go do it again. Luckily, that didn't happen for you, little T. Okay, next one. They refuse to answer questions about team turnover. So turnover is basically when people leave or get fired from a company. On LinkedIn, there are ways where you can see a company's like average turnover. Otherwise, there are ways you can learn about it, right? Like if you asked a question about who was previously in this role and why it didn't work out, or why if you just ask the company, why are you guys hiring for this role? They will have to say somebody left, somebody got promoted, something happened, there's a reason why this role is positioned, or even it could be we're investing more into this business unit and we need to hire more people. There's a lot of different areas where you could be asking about this question. So if they're not answering any questions about team turnover, then There's probably a big red flag. Okay, next piece. They speak negatively about current or former employees. This one's pretty simple, but if they're willing to trash talk other people, you'll likely be next. So it's better to just step away if there is a lot of negative conversation in the beginning. Now, if you're in the beginning of your career, it's really important that you ask questions about career development. Some of those first positions you take are going to make all of the difference in the world of your career development. And so, if they dodge questions about career development or career growth, that's another red flag. It basically just shows you've got a boss in front of you who's not going to support your growth, and they're probably going to become a barrier in your career. Now, other things that happen sometimes is people can make over promises, like they can say there's even more perks than there maybe are, or there's lots of raises or many promotions, but they don't share any details. So if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Or it could even be like, I remember I did an internship for like a door to door sales company for like 5 seconds before I quit. Anyways, the way that they would get all these college kids in there is they'd be like, oh, if you do it, you go on a trip to the Dominican Republic and blah, 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 blah. Anyways, 'twas not true. You would have to be like a top 5% salesperson. You'd have to do so many of these things in order to get into that role. And it was simply not. Next one is they might expect you to work overtime without additional pay. Now, this doesn't always come out in interviews, but there are certain telltale signs. One of them is we work hard and play hard. A lot of companies like to say that. Now, if they say it, remember, it's a soft red flag. If you hear a company say something like, we're like family, run. Just run. Although I have seen instances where the family thing might be a good thing, I guess. I don't know. In general, it is a company. It is not a family. Don't let them think that they're your family. Family comes first. Ohana means family. Corporations are not Ohana. Okay. We hate to hear that, little T. That is unacceptable behavior amongst companies. Well, no, exactly. They definitely don't. No company's ever gonna love and appreciate you for real. There's this saying like if you have a bucket of water and you have marbles in the water, right? And you pull a marble out, the water just fills it. You don't notice that there's a missing marble. Okay, next one. Next red flag. They make you feel like you should be grateful for the opportunity. Now, this is something, it'd be really weird if someone did this. But if they're making you feel like, oh, you should be so grateful that I took this interview, or oh, you should be so glad you're even considered for this position, to be very clear, it is still a job. And so if they're acting like they're doing you a favor, it's very likely that they will start to undervalue you, or they may just undervalue you at a baseline. Because to be very clear, you're doing them the favor, not necessarily just them. Next one is big red flag is they brag about being hard to work for. Now, if they think that it is a badge of honor to be difficult to work with, it seems obvious. This does seem obvious. However, I still worked for someone who did this. So it is not obvious enough. If they are bragging about being difficult to work for, they are difficult to work for. Take them at their word and run for the fucking hills. Another one is they constantly interrupt or talk over you. Now, I understand you're making a face, little T. I understand I have ADHD. I understand we both have done this just in this conversation alone. I'm not saying that it doesn't happen at all. But if you're having a hard time getting any words in because they're regularly talking over you during an interview, that is key. During an interview, then if they can't listen now, they're not going to listen later. right? Another piece is they can't articulate what success looks like in the role. So that question I mentioned earlier of like, what does success look like in 6 months, or what would you be happy with, right? If they don't have clear expectations, then you're going to constantly be guessing. They're already, in a sense, setting you up for failure. And some people enjoy this level of ambiguity. I know I did early on in my career, but at the end of the day, it can also be a really stressful way to kick off your career and to get started in the workplace. Next one is they struggle to describe company culture. If they struggle to describe company culture, it's probably toxic. It's hard to describe a toxic culture in a positive way. So if they can't describe it in their own words, or they don't even know what the company culture is that has been established, you could just assume bad. When in doubt, just don't trust a company, right? Sometimes, and this shouldn't happen, but sometimes it might happen, is they might ask unprofessional or inappropriate questions. Questions about your personal life, questions about your marital status. I mean, I was talking to a colleague who was telling me that when potentially being considered for a promotion, her manager asked her what her timeline was for getting pregnant, which is illegal. But anyways, he did it anyways, right? And that person didn't know that they couldn't be asked that question, and ultimately lied and said not soon, and then got the promotion. But long story short, they should have never been asked that question. That's not allowed. Next thing that's an interesting case, and only comes up if you ask good questions, is they will take credit for their team's success without mentioning any other employees. If you see signs of a boss stealing credit for work in the early stages of an interview, they will likely do the same thing to you. So something to keep an eye out for. Now, something that is possible and it may happen is they make passive aggressive or condescending comments. If they undermine you now and you are just in a first date interview, imagine how bad it can get. And here's the thing. I 100% had one of these interviews. I had a manager ask me where I saw myself in 10 years, and I said getting my MBA. And his exact response was, well, that's fucking stupid. And I still went and worked at this company. So many red flags that I have ignored. Hopefully other people will learn from my mistakes, okay? There's a reason why this podcast exists. Like, I have made many of these mistakes. Okay, next one. They push for an immediate answer on the job offer. This is what I was saying. Taking 24 hours or one night to think over a job offer is standard practice. It is the basics. So if you are getting the desperation for someone and you can feel they have pressure trying to fill this process, it likely means they have a high turnover and they're trying to get you to sign over your soul before you get smart. Okay, and before you can move on to other things. Now, a couple other ones. If you're in person, or even if you're on like a Zoom, if they're struggling to like make eye contact or at least look at the camera, and they often seem like they're looking at, maybe they're looking at emails, or they're looking at a message, or they're looking at, something else. That's often a bad sign, just because it shows that they don't care. And so if they don't care now, they're definitely not going to care later. And it probably shows how chaotic the work environment is too. Another thing is some managers will downplay work-life balance. Sometimes they might say something like, oh, we're looking for someone who's really dedicated, or who will go, above and beyond, or who's willing to work the extra mile. That likely just means they expect you to work for no money. They want overtime, they want extra hours, and they don't intend to pay you anything else. And then the last red flag, critical, is your gut instinct. Now, my gut instinct definitely told me that all of these things that happened were red flags. But because I am a dum-dum, and you could say I was very naive because no one explained these things to me early on in my career, I would make so many excuses. I mean, and I had previous managers from Eastern Europe, so it just culturally there were differences. And so I'd be like, oh, it's a cultural thing. Oh, it's this. No. Yes, maybe there were some cultural elements in it, but boy, oh boy, was it definitely a toxic work environment. And I definitely should have ran for the hills. Okay. Right. Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. Tough Japanese businessmen are, boy, oh boy, are they direct. But boy, oh boy, is it also not normal. All right, little T, we're in the last section and then we're going to wrap up. You ready to strap in? We've got some questions to ask. No, 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 no. I'm not interviewing you. Here are so when we get into the reverse interview questions, here are some really good questions that you should be asking and kind of what you can expect and what it tells you. So my favorite question on this list is, how would you describe your leadership style? This is such a great question to ask a potential manager because it's going to show them how they see themselves as a manager, but more importantly, it starts to give you the signs of whether or not they're supportive or controlling. So a green flag answer might be, I believe in clear expectations, regular feedback, and empowering my team to make decisions when I'm not available. That's great. That sounds good. A red flag answer would be, I don't micromanage, but I expect my team to be self sufficient and figure everything out. That does not make sense. Right? That's already like, okay, I don't micromanage, but you expect all of these other things to happen. What it really does is it may sound positive, but it lacks a bit of support, right? There's no mentorship. They don't even take accountability for the role. In the previous one, they mentioned more of a flexible approach, and at the bottom line, they say they trust their employees, which is key. Another one, this one I already mentioned, but what does success look like in this role within the first 6 months? Right? So 6 months down the line, what's going to tell you you hired the right person? It's going to also help you understand, like, do they set realistic expectations? If they say, oh, in 6 months, I want you to change the world. Soup's not realistic. Not going to be possible, right? So a green flag answer would be, in the first 6 months, we'd expect you to fully onboard, understand our processes, and contribute to at least one major project. That's super reasonable. It gives you time for onboarding. It gives you time for training. It also shows they've thought this through. There's structure, there's processes, so forth. A red flag answer is, we need someone who can hit the ground running immediately. And in 6 months, we don't know what will happen. Now, boy, oh boy, it seems obvious, but it's more common than you think you're going to hear these answers when you're talking to somebody. So it's a sign that they lack proper onboarding. It shows that you're going to be really overwhelmed with new hires, and it's just, they're going to put too much on your plate. Another question. How does the company handle work-life balance? Well, this is pretty obvious, right? It exposes what reasonable expectations they have, how likely it is that you're going to be overworked. So if you have a green flag answer, you're going to be looking for someone that says something along the lines of, we encourage employees to disconnect after hours. We ensure employees use their PTO. Any of those different items is really going to help show that they have supportive culture, right? Like in my boyfriend's current role, he is able to work from other countries, right? But he was remotely from other countries when we travel. But when he was interviewing with this one company, they said they don't allow it. But the reason for not allowing it was, when our employees are abroad, we want them to really unplug and enjoy their PTO. And they get extra PTO because of it. So it's definitely a clear telltale sign when you've got a company that's going to overwork you, for sure. The next one. How does your company provide feedback to employees? Or how do you provide feedback to employees? Depending on if you're talking with the manager, the hiring team, HR, directors, it all depends. But really just trying to understand how the company handles feedback. And the idea is you want to understand what support they have for employees, how they focus on growth, or, do they exclusively focus on criticism? A green flag answer is something along the lines of, I give regular feedback, I give constructive feedback, and I ensure I give my employees the tools they need to improve. It shows you've got a boss who cares about your growth. A red flag answer is, I'm direct. If something wrong, I'll let you know. That's a little harsh. It's definitely not a strong managing tactic. It can demoralize employees. And although it is more common than you think, it's just something to note that if you have a manager that answers this question like that, you're very likely going to end up in a tricky spot. Okay, I already mentioned this before, so I'm not going to go through all the details, but can you tell me about the last person in this role? Why did they leave, or why are you hiring for it? This is going to help you understand turnover, the history. A green flag answer, oh, they moved on to somewhere else, they were promoted, they're growing, it's amazing. A red flag answer, they weren't a good fit. We had some issues, but we don't like to talk about it. That means that manager is blaming the other person instead of taking any accountability for their contribution to the situation. Next one. How does the team handle conflicts or disagreements? Conflict is very common in the workplace, and a company's ability to handle it in a healthy way can be a telltale sign of their ability to grow and to evolve with challenges. It also tells you how toxic a company can be sometimes. So let's say a green flag answer is someone who's looking for, oh, I encourage open discussions. Sometimes we have mediation if needed, but everyone's voice matters. That's great. It shows that you have a psychologically safe workplace. A psychologically safe workplace is a workplace where you feel safe to voice your opinions, right? Okay, next question. What is a company's approach to professional development? This is really important, right? It's going to expose what a company does for employee growth. It's going to tell you kind of, do they have any processes in place? Do they have any programs in place? Some companies may even have funding where they have like individual learning funds that companies have. I know big consulting firms like Deloitte and stuff, they have huge like development programs where they really invest a lot in training people, not only the materials they need for the job, but also company culture, how the company operates, how they do things. So it exposes a lot. A green flag answer is, we communicate with our employees regularly about their career goals. We have a fast-paced environment, but we provide support and we have training resources that help new hires adjust. That's great, right? Red flag is, this role is for somebody who's tough and can learn on their own. Although it is important to be scrappy, it shows that they're not going to invest anything in developing your career. So even though you're going to give them a third of every single day of your life, potentially more, they're not willing to invest a third back into you. Another great question to ask is, what are some challenges employees face in this role? It's a great way to set some honest expectations, and it's really hard for them to hide job difficulties when you ask this question. So sometimes what you'll see is, oh, it's a fast-paced work environment, and so sometimes processes can change before employees have time to learn them, but we bake in extra time to ensure that employees are comfortable with the changes or understand the changes so they're able to do their job best, right? This is something where they're admitting the challenge, but they're also sharing, like, we've put in measures in place to make sure you're not just shit out of luck. The next one is a little bit unique, but it's something that can be really, really, really beneficial, especially if you're going for like a higher up job, is, can I speak with a current team member about their experience? So this is you asking them, can I have a contact from your team at this company that can tell me more about the role, about the job, about this? If they're being transparent, if they don't have anything to hide, they're going to give you a contact, no problem. They're going to be like, you're amazing. We want you to work here. Go talk to all of these people. Get in whatever questions you need to get in. A red flag answer is they dodge it. Oh, no, it's not necessary. Oh, no, we don't need to do that. Oh, it sounds like a bad idea. No, thank you. That's a freaking red flag. Or even if it's something like, oh, they don't have time to talk to you, that's also a red flag. Because that means their employees are so overworked they can't get anything done. So okay, little T, we've covered a lot. We've covered the types of interviews. This is definitely the longest episode, just so you know, in the whole series. Everything else is way shorter than this one. Yeah, well, because interviews have so much juice behind them. This is like the big section. But to conclude things, some key highlights. Number 1, an interview is really just two people coming together to lie to each other. A company is going to try to convince you that they're the best place in the world, that everybody who works there is so happy, and that everything's perfect, which is typically a lie. And you're trying to convince them that you want to work there so desperately bad, and you will give them your soul, and you will do all of the things that they need you to do, and you've never done anything bad, and everything's perfect. Also a lie. So don't overthink it. Another thing, an interviewer also probably doesn't want to be there either. Not all interviewers love interviewing. So make it a conversation. Make sure to prepare stories, examples, answers that are going to make you memorable, because there's so many people that they're going to talk to. You want to make sure you stand out. And a pro tip is curate your tell me about yourself answer to include authentic nuggets that will stand out to an interviewer and really speak to who you are as a person. And the very last thing, ask questions. Research the company, know the business, know the manager, and ask questions during your interview. Because at the end of the day, they and you are both trying to learn about each other. And as much as it is about them wanting to work with you, you need to determine if you want to work with them. And with that, little T, we wrap up episode 0. You can download the worksheet of questions, the pilot. You can download the worksheet of questions that I outlined here in some of the notes from the episode on the website. And we did it, little T. Episode 0, How to Survive Your Boss, coming to you with the corporate advice you didn't know you needed. And we'll be back here soon. Lego. Okay, bye. Peace and love.